I know God saved me for a bigger purpose than just myself. 5 years ago, I was in a storage building with a flashlight up against my skin and a needle in my arm. I'll just go all the way back. We'll start from the beginning. So my parents were addicts and abusive, so I seen a lot of dysfunction from an early young age. 13 was the first time I stayed the night with a boy. 15 was the first time I used any kind of hard drugs. 16, I was using an IV needle. I was a high school dropout. I have a 9th grade education. Had my daughter when I was 19. I then met a guy and we spent 14 years together. We had a son. He had 3 kids. So I was, from the outside, you couldn't really tell how dysfunctional I truly was. I mean, we owned our own business. We had a nice home, nice cars, didn't miss a cheerleading competition and academic competition. From the outside, it looked normal, but on the inside, it was very toxic. And everything that my parents did and everything I hated, that's what we had become. So I left after a very long abusive relationship. And I moved here, quickly got messed up with the wrong people, started drinking daily. Then I started using methamphetamine, and it quickly became a daily addiction. I couldn't stop myself once I started. Became homeless, lost my children. Drug task force kicked in the door. So for about 3 years, I just spiraled into a deep depression. Didn't have my children, didn't have anything to look for. I mean, I was hopeless, for real. I was mad when I'd wake up in the morning. So I moved down to Texas to be close to my kids and start my life over, but I didn't do that. I just spiraled deeper into addiction. I was living in a condemned house, no running water. I was using the restroom in a bucket, I mean, it had gotten so bad. My family didn't have nothing to do with me. I was arrested on a traffic stop in Collin County, Texas, which I thought was a routine traffic stop. At this point, I didn't know the magnitude of the things that was going on. But I think, well, they're gonna let me go just because the tail light's out. And he comes back up and he says, get out of the car. We have a hold out of the Western District of Missouri. And I remember just throwing my hands up at that point because, I mean, I was so hopeless at that time. Like I hated myself and I hated my life so bad. And I remember throwing my hands up, and at that moment, I felt the most peace I'd ever felt in my life. I knew that I was not gonna die in addiction. I knew I was gonna have a chance to live. Granted, I thought I was gonna be behind prison walls for the rest of my life because I was very guilty for the things that I did. I've actually been to federal prison, but I was never sentenced. It's a pretty neat story. So I was released on March 13th. It was actually Friday the 13th. Who says 13's not a lucky number? Friday the 13th to Guiding Light Ministry. It is an amazing women's program, discipleship program here in Joplin, ran by a great lady named Juliet Hardy and her assistant Linda Burris. They just took me right in, and my life instantly started to transform. I started to learn who God was and who God says I am, and I started to become the woman that I was always meant to be. I got a car for the first time, a checking account for the first time, and I know this may sound crazy to some people, but I had never experienced these things. I was a stay-at-home mom in a very dysfunctional relationship that was very controlling, so I didn't get to experience that stuff. And so I spent 18 months there. I was federally mandated there, so little did they know that they were doing the best thing they could possibly do for me. They thought it was a punishment, and it was actually a blessing because it transformed my life. I completed the program, moved into a transitional community here in town called God's Resort. It was amazing to have such a loving community supporting you, and it was a sober community, so there was the accountability for that, helped me along with that, and then it was just a Christian atmosphere, so you couldn't ask for a better place. So while I was at God's Resort, I met my soon-to-be husband, Darren. He's an amazing man of God, and I just knew immediately after we went on a walk and prayed together that he was the one. And we got engaged and married there at God's Resort. Jay St. Clair actually officiated our wedding there at God's Resort. So it was great, it was beautiful. Here I am, married, buying a home. I can see God in everything. I can't make this stuff up. Again, October 4th of 2021, 5 years to the exact day that I lost my son to DFS, to Child Protective Services. He was placed back in my home. 5 is the number of grace. God has shown me so much grace. So in that court case, I had an opportunity to talk and tell my story a little bit. And I spoke to the judge, and I just told him the truth, and he said, we'll never know how you changed. What's your secret? How did you change? And I said, sir, it's no secret. It was God. God changed my life. I've never seen a judge cry or a prosecutor. There wasn't a dry eye in that courtroom. 25, 30 people in the courtroom, and everybody was sobbing. And I walked out of that courtroom with 5 years probation and time served, unheard of. It was an amazing day for me. And I've just been living my life to the fullest ever since. I pled guilty to the 666 grams, straight from the devil. The mark of the beast and all of those things, the 666, like you can't make these things up. So I get a phone call from my public defender in Texas, and he says, well, you don't have to come to Texas. He says, they threw out your case. And I said, what? And he said, well, they did. They threw out your case. So it's like it never existed. And I was like, oh my gosh, how can that even be? So there was God again, like in this Operation Archangel, really? Like, all that happened to save my life. I'm convinced. You couldn't convince me otherwise. In September, had an opportunity to go to Kenya, Africa. I'm actually still on federal probation, so this is unheard of for someone to get a passport and leave the country while they're on federal probation. So I got to spend 3 weeks in Oyugis, Kenya. We started a women's recovery program. Guiding Light Ministry actually went international there, and we're opening up a women's home in Oyugis, and we started a sewing school. So I got to go be a part of that. I had never really had a job before Mike took me on in here. And I will remember the interview. I had just had all my teeth pulled, so I had no teeth, and I was looking pretty rough, facing 27 years in federal prison, and he hired me. And still to this day, I think he's a little crazy, but he said he never doubted that I was meant to be here. And he's been the most amazing boss that you could ever imagine. He's such an encourager for me and my husband. I don't plan on going anywhere unless they make me, so I absolutely love this place. It's a God-centered work environment. I don't know anywhere where you can go get your car repaired and get prayer and loved on, and if you come at lunchtime, you even get free lunch. So there's no way God brought me from all these things, drug addiction, homelessness, IV using, all these federal indictment, all these things for me just to keep that to myself. Jesus loves you. You are so much more than you think you are. Give yourself a chance. It will get better. It will get better. Surround yourself with good, godly people that are gonna help you, that are gonna encourage you and build you up. There is life after addiction. Life's really good. It's really good. It's changed. I'm not the person that I used to be, and I owe that all to Jesus and what he's done for me.